Good evening. We will give it a couple of minutes as usual for people to join. But I always like to start the session by reminding you that if you are watching our training or any of our videos, any of our live streams that go up into the group or on our Facebook page, please comment as if you are watching with us live. We love to go back and read the comments and see who has been there, who has joined us. But also, like I said last night, the more you engage, the more you're going to get out of this training, because that allows us as instructors to be able to tailor the training to suit your needs and your individual circumstances. So the more that you comment, the more you tell us, the more you get out of it. And also, it's just quite nice to know that we're not just talking to ourselves and that it actually makes sense. Obviously, it makes sense in our minds. We like to know that it's making sense for you guys at home as well. So when you jump on, I can see some people are joining us now, but when you jump on, if you let us know who is there, who is watching, as I always say, Facebook and StreamYard don't always get on. So they don't always show us who is joining us. So please do, wherever you can, put, even if you put your initial or you introduce yourself on your first comment, and if you're going to comment again, just use your initial. That would really help me. Yesterday, myself and Emma had such a gorgeous day just exploring the topic, the first of our lives, the first day of our training. And actually, at points, it was really quite emotional. I know Emma will absolutely agree with me, like reading the comments, reading about the impact that it's had in terms of, in particular, working with people's children, and just like the impact of that knowledge. You know, once you understand that stuff about the nervous system and how our bodies work, it gives you that beautiful sense of freedom. First of all, like it's nothing wrong with me if I respond, if I react, if I snap at people. Actually, this could be about the environment that I'm finding myself in. It could be just that my nervous system needs settling down. It doesn't make me a bad person, you know, and understanding that is so powerful anyway. But then understanding how you can influence other people just by showing up, feeling calm and centered yourself. To me, that's just like gold dust. Once you understand that, even if you didn't learn anything else over these 3 days and just went out into the world or back into the classroom, back into your workplace, back into your home, and you just maintain that in your awareness, our job is done. But we do have loads and loads of stuff to share with you today. So we'll just have a quick look at the comments to see who is hiding there. So we've got Michelle, who says, I'm feeling very inspired. So are we, Michelle. It's amazing because when we do, obviously, me and Emma do this as this is our living. This is what we do. This is what we wake up for. You know, so we're really used to sharing this kind of information. We know this stuff. But it's when you deliver it to other people and you see those light bulb moments go off and you read these comments, that's when we get the inspiration back again. So it's like that beautiful energy exchange. If, you know, we give you energy and you give it us back, because the more people that we touch with this, it makes us want to share it even more, even further and wider. So thank you for letting us know that you're feeling inspired. So are we. We have Alison as well. We've got Anna, we've got Vicky, and we've got Kelly. Some familiar faces there as well, which is lovely. It's gorgeous actually when you get those old familiar faces joining us, isn't it, Emma? We've got Joanne as well. Welcome. So, what's happened today? It's one of those days where I've literally convinced myself it was Wednesday and that tomorrow was Thursday. I've like lost an entire day. I've gone out this morning and I've taught a gorgeous, it ended up being a one-to-one session at the club, the health club that I work at. That was gorgeous. I met up with one of our instructors and we had a good old chat about everything mindfulness and meditation. It was really good fun. And I've come back here. I've prepped for this. I'm prepping for tomorrow. I'm going on holiday on Sunday. So I've got loads and loads of things going on, including taking loads of PCR tests and all that kind of stuff as well. So I've got a lot going on. So we are feeling like we're going to keep this nice and short if we can. We're going to keep ourselves on track to the point. But you'll notice we do get so uplifted and so excited by all this stuff. But just know that you can always watch this on the replay. If you've got kids that need to go to bed, if you've got other stuff that's going on, we absolutely appreciate that. Don't let yourself be overwhelmed. Take from it what you can in those moments. And then Vicky's saying she's got COVID. Oh no. If you need to go and rest, listen to your body. This is what this is all about. This is what we're teaching these children, isn't it? To listen to those signals from your body. If you need to rest, if you need to pause, if you need to be on your own, whatever it is, you go for it, Vicky. So it will wait here for you. It was really nice yesterday to have all of your comments. So just know that we absolutely appreciate your energy. But if you need to go and rest, go for it. Kelly's saying that she thought it was Wednesday as well, and she wrote it on the board. Kelly's a teacher. She's an awesome teacher. And that's the sort of thing that I would have done today. Absolutely. So with that in mind, we are going to get going. So thank you to everybody who took part in the training that we sent out this morning at 7 o'clock every day. If you signed up for the challenge, you'll receive an email from myself. In there is a bite-sized video. On today's video, the premise was that we wanted to introduce to you the principles of mindfulness and meditation in the form of our famous Exhale ABCs. Me and Emma talk about this all the time, so we always have a bit of a smile on our faces when we say, oh yeah, it's the ABCs. But for you, it might be completely new information. We included that information so that you had a loose framework in which to be able to help support your child or the children in your world through difficult or overwhelming emotions. So difficult situations, overwhelming emotions. And you had this framework that you could work through, which allows you to draw on all of the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. So I'm just going to talk our way through that a little bit. But what we really wanted to do for you today was actually start to put some of that into context, start to show you how, yes, it's great to have that framework, but how it actually works in practice and how flexible and moldable that framework can be to suit the children that are in your world and your situation. So essentially, in order for us to be able to understand how these principles work, we need to go back to that understanding of what happens within our bodies when we're experiencing those big emotions. And like I said yesterday, we have our autonomic nervous system. That nervous system has a constant stream of awareness running through it. And from that stream of awareness, that nervous system is able then to make choices about which emotional state and which physical state it wants to put you in. That emotional and physical state influences how you think, how you feel, and therefore how you behave. So on the stream of awareness that comes through, we have signals that come from the body to the brain. So 90% of the information about our external circumstances, about what's going on in the world, about how we should think, feel, and behave, comes from the body to the brain rather than the other way around. So we get it into our heads that it is the head that's running the show, but primarily it's the body that's running the show. So the body sends information to the brain about how we should be thinking, feeling, and behaving. That information the nervous system uses to decide which nervous system pathway it should put you in any given moment. So that information comes from our heart rate, our breathing rate, but also things like tension in the body, your body language. There's lots more to it than that, but that's the bare bones. It also takes information from your external circumstances, so your perception of what is happening around you. So the nervous system will use that information as well to gauge, should I put you in fight or flight mode? Should I put you in freeze and withdraw and isolate mode? Should I put you in calm and connected mode? And the other stream of awareness it uses is the information given to us from other people's nervous systems. So we spoke a lot about this yesterday. So there is an electromagnetic field which exists around your brain and of your heart. Your heart, the one at the heart, is 5,000 times stronger than that of the brain. But the important thing to remember is that on that electromagnetic field, we send out information about our state, about our physical state and about an emotional state. And remember, we are primal pack animals. And on the basis of that, My nervous system will check in with Emma's nervous system. If Emma is giving me that signal that she's stressed, potentially I am likely to fall in suit with in line with Emma, because our logical, analytical, rational part of our brain, the part of our brain that helps us make decisions, came much later. That evolved much later on. So before that, how did we decide whether we should be keeping ourselves small and hidden and safe, or whether we should be running away from that saber-toothed tiger, whether we should be feeling calm, content in our little cave? Before we had this thinking part of the brain, we just had our nervous systems. So we use that information from our pack, from our tribe, to help us inform how we should be thinking, feeling, and behaving. So we have three pathways, if you like, three states, I like to call them, that we can jump in and out of at any given moment. So we have the state that we want to be in, the calm and connected and collected state. That's you in control, just feeling just so, everything's okay. I feel at home in the world. I feel safe in the world. The world is a beautiful space to me. I see beauty in the world. That's the kind of narrative that we've got, like, as soon as you become stressed, the world's no longer your friend. You're not seeing any of the beauty in the world anymore. So that's one of the hallmarks of knowing that you're in that calm and centered ventral vagal state, is that you see the detail, you see the beauty, you see the goodness, you feel good in the world, and you want to be seen, and you want to connect, and you feel connected to others as well as yourself. One of the other states that we can move into is what you will probably know as fight or flight, or the sympathetic pathway. And what that is, hello Sarah, what that is what it says on the tin, really, is that state where we want to run away, we want to fight, we could come across quite aggressive, quite defensive, or we might have this feeling of, I just want to get out of here, I just need to leave, this situation doesn't feel safe to me, I don't feel safe here. And it's just mainly associated with that, with stress. When you get into the office and you're just like, get me out of here, and you feel that tension in your tummy, and you're just like, if one more thing happens, I'm going to explode. You're in fight or flight. But there is another option for your nervous system. It can drop you into what we know the system that is called dorsal state. You might like to understand that as like the freeze state, or like that state of where you literally are so exhausted, you just want to hide away from the world. You don't want to connect to anyone else. You don't want to be seen. You just want to make yourself small. The world is not safe for me anymore. It's not safe for me to be seen. I give up. That's the kind of feeling of being in dorsal. I've had enough. I cannot do it anymore. I give up. But also that state of disconnect, where you almost feel like you're not really there in that moment. I remember that a lot from being a child, almost like observing myself in a way, like I'm going through the motions in situations with this sense of numbness, without really actually being physically present in that moment. So we have the fight or flight mode and the freeze mode. Okay, they're the ones that we don't want to be scared of being in those states. What we want to be able to do is be able to move out of those states as quickly and as healthily as we can. What is important to remember is that when children move into those states, so when children are feeling anger or rage, for example, and there's that kind of aggression, there's that kind of like oppositional, kind of like defensive, like bitey energy to them, their prefrontal cortex has actually gone offline. So what that means is that bit that gives us our ability to understand language, to learn, to analyze, to think rationally, to think logically, to solve problems, that bit is no longer available to us. So what's really important to remember as well is that prefrontal cortex also gives us our sense of self. So quite often when children find themselves in fearful or anxiety-filled situations, when they feel threatened by their peer group, and when I say threatened, I don't necessarily mean that they're being physically attacked. I mean, if there's that sense of threat in terms of, I'm going to be rejected from this peer group, because remember that one of our primal needs as human beings is to feel connected. And for a lot of us, we would rather abandon ourselves than be abandoned. You know, like we lose our sense of who we are. We lose our sense of what's right and what's wrong for me personally. You know, like what I stand for, what makes me feel good, what doesn't sit with me, what makes me feel uncomfortable, all that stuff. So when children find themselves in these situations, they don't have access to this bit here. So that's the thinking, the analysing, the problem solving, the confidence, but also that sense of self. So, what we want to do with our ABCs, with those principles of mindfulness and meditation, is help the prefrontal cortex come back online as quickly as possible. The caveat to that is that we don't want to deny or disown any of our feelings, and we'll talk about why we don't want to do that later on. But primarily, those principles, those new ABCs, are going to give you the opportunity to help support your child bring their prefrontal cortex back online so they can make decisions which feel good for them, but also so that they can feel like they can solve their problems themselves with the support of an adult if that's appropriate, but also just so they just come back into that calm, centered, connected state where the world feels safe and beautiful for me again, where it is safe for me to show up exactly as I am, you know, and all of that stuff that me and Emma have spoke about over the past couple of days in terms of our own personal journey with mental health in childhood and just not really being able to own who we are. We're only just doing it now, like age 40. Which is fine, but it'd be so much nicer, wouldn't it, if we'd had that opportunity earlier in our earlier years. So to take you through those ABCs really quickly, so I know most of you will have watched the training already, so you'll have some idea of what I'm going on about. So as soon as you notice that your child is struggling maybe with an overwhelming emotion, or they're finding a particular situation difficult, the first thing that we want them to be able to do, and this is what we want them to do, is notice. Notice that they're experiencing something. Notice that something is happening physically in their body and emotionally. Because from that point of noticing that something is going on, I'm able to then choose to bring myself back into balance. So it's almost like we have the situation which causes a response in us. In between the situation, the response is that pause, it's that gap. You know, bringing that awareness to what's happening physically within me gives me that opportunity to choose how I respond. Am I going to bite back, or am I going to choose differently? So we have this opportunity to come back into the balance. When we bring ourselves back into balance, what we then have access to is that prefrontal cortex. And then we can move into that space of calm and connectedness. And from that point, as caregivers, as teachers, as parents, it's really important that the final C also includes that check-in and chat around what has just gone on. You know, that processing needs to happen, that honoring of the fact that there was emotion there, or maybe there even still is emotion there and we're still working our way through it. That bit is super important. But what I really wanted to talk to you about tonight was the fact that sometimes we need to start at B, right? So what we really want to teach children to do through continuous little bite-sized pockets of mindfulness and meditation practice each and every day, and we're going to weave it into our everyday life, and we'll learn more about that in tomorrow's training. But what we want to do through that is give them that ability to be able to develop that sense of awareness of what's happening with my body, so that they can recognize, okay, when my tummy starts to get tight, or when my jaw gets tight, when my hand goes like this. Quite often children will say to me in class, they're like, when I'm angry, I just feel like this. And that is exactly actually how I feel too. So I can totally relate to that. Well, what we want to be able to do is build that awareness muscle, and it's a muscle like any other that you would need to work on. When I first go to the gym, I'm pretty weak. By week 6, I can lift a little bit more weight, right? So it's the same with this. The more we practice this, the more we bring awareness to the body, the more we start to link emotions to those particular sensations in the body without necessarily labeling them as this is anger or this is whatever. It's just like, when my body feels like this, it makes me want to do that. Don't worry, I know we spoke about it yesterday, don't worry about the correct language for emotions and all that kind of stuff at this stage. But what is important to remember that awareness comes from the prefrontal cortex sometimes. So what we want to do is train children. I don't like the word using train, but you know what I mean. I want to teach children, get them into a habit where their first response is to check in with the body, and that might not happen overnight. So it might be, and then we can check in with the prefrontal cortex. We can start to those processes to happen ourselves. We can do that autonomously, if you like. The child can do that without our support. But initially, what we might need to do is start with B, because that prefrontal cortex might be so far offline that they don't even hear you when you're talking to them. You know, like before I understood this information, I might say to children that I knew, you know, oh, calm down, stop it, stop. Why are you winding yourself up? You're winding yourself up, calm down. And now I'm like, actually, they haven't got that rational part of their brain isn't available to them right now. You know, telling a child to calm down, they can't even understand the language. You know, if they're that far gone, that is not, it's not helpful for them. So we might have to bring them back to the body to begin with, and then move into C, and then move into A, which is the awareness, and then go back into the chat after that. So it's absolutely fine for you to understand these principles and change those ABCs around a little bit. So it might be that you start with bringing myself back into my body. That's the really important bit. Even if, and I'm doing it naturally, this is how I've hardwired my brain. This is what we want children to be able to do. You know, when I talk about coming back to my body, I'm talking about connecting to my heart. You know, I've had my hand on my heart space, and for children, quite often we ask them to come back to their bodies. So one hand on the heart space, one hand on the tummy. You know, and we want that to become an automatic response. But that turning inwards then allows us to move into that state of calm and connectedness. Remember, we spoke about it last night in terms of being open, being receptive, being able to, you know, take on other people's support. You know, when you're still very much in the throes of overwhelm with whatever emotion is coming up for you, sometimes we're not wanting that kind of support. So what we want to be able to do is get them back into the body. That turning inwards actually starts to generate alpha brain waves. Alpha brain waves are those brain waves that are associated with calm, with relaxation, but also with creativity, which is why it's so good for problem solving. Asking a child or enabling a child to come back into the body is going to help them solve whatever problem they're in. It's going to help them think outside the box. It's going to help them be able to come up with solutions. But also it connects them back to their confidence. What's really amazing about alpha brainwaves as well is that they're associated with clarity. So it's those kind of moments of, actually, why was I so worked up about that in the first place? You know, and it depends at the age of the child how much support you're going to have to give them with that. We can talk you through that. But it's just that gentle turning inwards, just that focus being more on themselves rather than the external situation really, really helps. The next thing that's important to do in terms of coming, if you're going to start with that B, you're going to start with bringing back into balance, is to name the emotion in a way that's appropriate for that child. So as I said before, you don't have to use names that are in particular labels that mean anything to anybody else. But the reason why that's important is that when I name, even if it's a name of a person, you know, quite often, you know, you might say something like, this is Mr. Angry coming up, you know, that kind of thing. You know, for me, I always like to talk about my inner critic, you know, like when I'm like really negative and really bitey, like this is actually, this is my fear, or this is my inner critic, this is whatever I want to call that moment. But what that does is it gives you a sense of distance, so that I am then able to witness that as just something to notice. So something that's coming up in my body just for me to notice, rather than something that I am. So I am experiencing anger rather than I am anger. Let me know if that makes sense. That is so important because it allows you to have that sense of distance. It allows me to go, actually, this is not necessarily about me. This is just the situation, my nervous system, as I've already said, and our capacity for stress. We've not really spoke about that at all, but in terms of if you've been through trauma, if you're not well, if you've been through stuff that day, or you've got a lot of responsibility, all of those things can reduce your capacity to be able to deal with stress. So it gives us that sense of distance so that we can witness that, almost we can observe that process rather than being completely consumed with it. So people are saying it makes sense, which is good. So what we want to do is really pay attention to our language when we're speaking to children. I'm going to break that down a little bit as well, but make sure that we are using these ABCs on repeat. So these are designed to help us transition, move through these emotions. And we'll talk about why it's really, really important to not repress emotions. When we repress emotions, what's actually happening there is that it's creating extra mental load for us. It's extra, the body takes it on. It's a greater load for the body. It stays in the body. If you deny and disown and pretend that, or ask your child, for example, to calm down, to stop being silly, don't get so angry. The amount of times that, people have said, not necessarily my parents, but maybe teachers, maybe caregivers have said to me, you're being silly. They're asking me to deny or to disown how I'm feeling. What that's doing is it's forcing me to repress or suppress my emotion. It's also forcing me to turn away from my own needs for support. Like I was such a sensitive child, and I know Emma was as well, as a deeply feeling child in a really messy, chaotic world. And so constantly I'm being told, you're being silly, stop crying, stop that, calm down. I was also particularly hyperactive. It's like I was laughing before because I can quite easily slip back into that crazy kid. I was playing football outside with my stepchildren, and actually next door text to say, can you keep the noise down? Like I can totally go into that into that mode as well. But it's really important actually that you honor all sides of who you are, and that we allow our children space to honor their emotions, that we validate them, that we let them know that we've seen it. And that's why working with that child to name that emotion is so important, because it honors it. We're admitting it's there. You're experiencing fear, and that is okay. That allows me to own it, and then it allows me then to choose, do I want to move my way through this? Do I want to come back into balance so that I can maybe reframe that with some clarity, with some creative thinking, when I've got my confidence back? Because one of the other things happens when the prefrontal cortex goes offline is that we suddenly are faced with this brain which is now prone and wired up now to have more negative thought patterns. Remember that the brain's job is to keep you alive. Part of its job of keeping you alive involves you thinking about all the different worst case scenarios of what could happen, so that I can preempt it, so that I can prevent that from happening, so I can plan for if that does happen. So that's why our thought processes become really negative when we enter the fight or flight phase, or the freeze state, if you like. So what we want to do is help that prefrontal cortex come back down so that I can change my thought processes. They're going to be much more positive. I'm going to feel much more confident. So we are, to stay on track, we're going to go in with after repetition, after teaching and working with your child to help understand what's happening in the body when certain emotions come up. So we're going to provide contrast, and maybe that's between creating tension in the body and then explaining to a child that actually, like I've just done, like when you feel anger, sometimes your tummy feels really tight, or your hands go like this, or even just opening up that conversation with that child and saying, how does your body actually feel when you're angry, but also sort of using movement. And there's lots of other ways to do it, but it's about that repetition of allowing children to feel that contrast between calmness and tension, or excitement or fear, and they'll describe it their personal experience. Most children from a really young age are able to, this is the average child without specific needs, but they are able to witness and talk to you about sensations in their body. They're able to notice sensations in their body. And the example that I used yesterday was that we potty train our children really young, right? So that means that they understand, they can feel and notice and become aware of physical sensations. So we know that children from, that's why we work with kids from age 2, because we know that they're able to do it. So to put it into a practical context, and again, as always, I am going to let Emma speak in a minute as well, but she's so patient. She sits there just waiting.
I just take
She waits for the monologue to complete, and then she'll give us some gold in a minute. It's just I get in like a role, and I'm like, oh, I must tell them this, I must tell them this. Let me just have a sip of my drink. I've got an apple kombucha. So, right, how do you put that into context? How do we actually use this stuff? So what we want to work through is working from the awareness, the noticing that something, and the acknowledgement that something is happening in the body. Something is happening in the mind. So I'm experiencing something physical and I'm experiencing something emotional as well. It's okay, Vicky, if you need to go, this will be here waiting for you when you feel better. Get well soon. So we're going to move from A into B. So we're going to move ourselves into balance. We're going to make that choice. The child is going to make that choice to come back into balance. And remember that the younger the child, the more support they're going to need to do that. Then from that B, we're going to move into that space of calm, of clarity, of creativity, of confidence, but also remembering the chat and the check-in with you as the caregiver afterwards. So how would I actually do it? So to work through, it depends on the scenario. We'd be here all night if we went through every single scenario, and every child deals with emotions in different ways, right? You know, I've got 2 boys that are in the same year at school, so they're really similar in theory, but they deal with things completely. Some things are similar, some things are completely different. So one of the things that I would do if I was aware of one of my children is maybe anxious or fearful about something, I might say to them, can you tell me how you feel? Can you talk to me about how you're feeling right now? When we, you know, sometimes if we're in that really fearful, I give up, say, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to be here anymore, we've moved into that freeze state, right? So I might then be able, I'm not going to be faced with that aggression, I'm not going to be faced with that opposition, so to speak, but there will be that barrier between connection potentially, which you might have to weave around the edges of. If they can't tell me how they feel, if they can't link that to emotion because then they're not there yet, or they're not able to do that because of the prefrontal cortex being offline, I might then say to them, can you tell me how you feel in your body? If that is not able, if they can't use language, if they can't get to that point at that moment where they're able to describe what's happening, they're too overwhelmed, I'm just going to ask them to just come back to their body. One hand on the tummy, one hand on the chest. Sometimes they won't do that at all. And I know Emma was saying she had to do with her daughter the other day. She had to breathe and regulate her nervous system and just breathe in front of her, be the witness, be the model for her child. And eventually her child fell into line. That's what's beautiful about coherence, that eventually it just kicks in anyway. But you've just got to stay really calm and settle and just be really present and witness that child's emotion, not deny it, not disown it, but just breathe with them. One of the other things that I might say to them is, you know, give them suggestions. Are you feeling tightness in your tummy? Are you feeling your hands are clenching? Whatever. What's your breathing like? Is your breathing up here or is it breathing down there? Is your heart going fast? Is your breathing feeling fast? Is it fast or is it slow? One of the other things that I might say to them is that I can see, or I've noticed that you're experiencing some insert the blank emotion, you know, so maybe anxiety, if they understand what that means. I can see that you're maybe feeling scared. Is that right? Don't forget that bit. Is that right? Because there'd be nothing worse, would there, than saying that isn't actually what I'm feeling at all, Mum or teacher, whoever it is. That would be not honouring, you know, it's complete disowning. Some children would just go along with you as well. And then some children won't give you any, they might just be in a complete rage. And with younger children, like toddlers, it is absolutely okay to say, I mean, it always makes me laugh when I think about it, but to say something along the lines of, it's hard to do when you've not actually got a child screaming in front of you, but, you know, that sounds like an angry noise, you know, it's that kind of thing. And I always like, as I say that, I'm thinking, yeah, but in real life, but it absolutely, you know, it does work to be able to allow that child to see that you are witnessing how they're feeling. You're not asking them to stop. You're not asking them to calm down. You're not saying this isn't real. You're being silly. It's like, I can see that you're experiencing something here. That's really important. From around age 8, meta awareness really improves. And what that means, what meta awareness means, is essentially if you imagine your thought patterns, and I say this all the time, just like the Sky News feed, just like this little banner that's ticking along the bottom there, it's being able to observe your thoughts. It's being able to say, you know, I'm feeling angry on the tube, right? So I get on the tube and I'm like huffing, puffing around, and I'm like, just feeling a bit stressed. As an adult, I'm able to say, right, I'm feeling like that because it's stressful on the tube, I'm underground, it's hot, I've got all these bags, I'm late, all that kind of stuff. Whereas children become really consumed with their emotion. Whereas I'm able, as an older person, to step back and say, actually, you're feeling like that because of X, Y, Z. Okay, so children from around age 8 really start to be able to develop that sense of meta awareness, that sense of being able to observe what's happening. So when you get to that kind of age, that's why it's really, really important then in that point for you to be able to use language around, I am experiencing anger, rather than I am angry. Okay, we're not going to get it right every time. And remember that we're conditioned to do this stuff, especially if your parents are saying stuff like that to you all the time, you know, like, calm down, don't be silly, you know, like that's kind of hardwired into you. So it'll take a bit of unlearning, but that's why we've called it this, relearning your ABCs. So you can unlearn all that stuff over time, but just be kind to yourself. So I've spoke about the acknowledgement is the absolute key there. The other thing that I wanted to say really quickly before I let Emma jump in and share some of her magic and her wisdom is that in terms of choosing how to respond to that awareness. So we're now at that point where the child or you as a caregiver are aware or suggesting to that child that there is some emotion that's overwhelming the child. From that point, it's really important that we allow the child to choose their own be, if you like, if they're able to. If they're old enough, as I say, from 8 onwards, they might be able to choose how best to respond in order to find balance. And obviously, again, that will depend on their amount of level of experience with mindfulness and meditation, the number of tools and techniques they've got in their back pocket, for example. And that's our job as meditation instructors, to teach them that. So we've got this ongoing teaching about awareness of the messages that your body sends you, and we do that, we weave that into every day. But then we've got people like us that go into schools and say, this is an amazing technique to bring balance back, you know. But one of the things that's really important as a caregiver or as a teacher or as a parent for you to understand is that there might be a different response depending on whether your child has moved into freeze mode or that dorsal state, that state of where they want to hide, they want to give up, they want to withdraw, they want to disconnect. Quite often my little boy will sort of end up in this state because he tries so hard, bless him, he's so resilient. Like, he'll play football and he'd be trying and trying. And once we took him ice skating, oh my gosh, I'll tell that story another day, but that was just like the best demonstration of resilience I've ever seen in my life. Like, he found it so difficult, but would he give up? He would not give up. But by the end of that day, he was just like, I give up. I am rubbish. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. I want to be on my own. Leave me alone. All that kind of stuff. He's in that freeze mode, that dorsal mode. He's in the world, you know, I want to hide away. I want to make myself small. I want to withdraw. I'm exhausted. It's just no good. It's no point anymore. My response to him in terms of choosing balance would be completely different to if he was demonstrating to me anger, aggression, if he was very oppositional, if he was very defensive, if he was in that fight or flight mode. So when we are dealing with a child that's in that fight or flight mode, that aggression, they're really super angry, maybe somebody's took their toy or whatever it is, what we need them to do is burn off that energy. Then it might be appropriate for you to employ a really gorgeous breathing technique, which is going to help move that emotion through the body. Or it might be more appropriate, depending on your child, for them to go and have a run around the block, for example, or go and ride their bike, or as long as it's safe for them to do that. Obviously, if they're in an absolute rage, you're not going to let them fly out the door on their own. It's going to be supervised, but it might be more appropriate for them to burn the energy off. If I've got a child that's in that freeze mode, that dorsal state, what's important is to try and get them to move back into fight or flight almost. So we have to engage back in. If you think of it as a hierarchy, we've got the calm and connected ventral vagal at the top, we've got fight or flight in the middle, and then we've got this freeze mode, this dorsal mode in the bottom. If I'm down here, I've got to get to here first before I can get to that calm, that space of calm and connection. So sometimes that means we need a bit more fire in the belly. We need to do some movement. We need to dance, something that's joyful, something that's going to bring you alive. Or even if that is not, like sometimes my child will not engage with that at all. But what I try and get him to do is open up the body. We've got receptors that exist in our lungs and also in our chest, that respond and send a message to the brain that all is well, that we can move back into that calm and connected state just by opening up the body. And that's because when we are stressed, when we are scared, when we are worried, when we're exhausted, we want to protect those vital organs so we come in. So what we want to do is we want to open our body up. So I thought it was really important to mention that sometimes it might require a bit of getting a bit of fire back into the belly, a bit of like movement, a bit of like, because when you're in that freeze state, you're just tired. You just want to hide away, and that is okay. But also, there comes a point where you say, what, we've got to get on. We've got to move through this. We've got to honor this, witness it, but we've got to move through it. We don't want to stay there for long. Our aim is to get children back to feeling calm, connected, creative, energized, and alive. So connected to that as well. So we've got those options. You breathe, dance, run. Emma's going to share some amazing techniques in a minute in terms, and put it into context for you in terms of when she's used these kind of techniques. But it's also important for the child to be able to choose their own environment in which to experience be in as well. So where am I going to take myself to be able to find that balance? And in terms of environment, I mean, do you want support and comfort from mum, or from caregiver, from teacher or TA, whatever it is? Or do I need space? Some children do better with finding balance on their own without that stimulus. If you join me for my live on Sunday, I spoke about all the different types of rest. Sometimes we just need to be away from other people, and that is also okay. So it's about them having the autonomy to choose. And the other thing that's really nice to know is that sometimes they can choose between silliness and stillness. Okay, so sometimes they will want to like really literally just fall into that gorgeous pillow of calm, and that breath work is just going to be really straightforward, really soul-led, really heart-led. But sometimes children will also want to process and sort of lift their emotions through humor, through being silly. And I think it's really important to get that across, that the instinct is that mindfulness and meditation is very straight, it's very chilled, and it's very quiet. It doesn't have to be like that. We make silly noises as we breathe. We pretend to be animals as we breathe. We make the kids laugh. That it works. It shifts your emotional state. And breathe. So I'm going to go hand over to Emma. And I'm going to ask Emma to share with us anything that she wants to say, really. But we really wanted you to give us some examples of when you've used these techniques, or techniques that that children that are in your world, whether that be your own children or children that you work with teaching exhale, or children that you've taught in the past. Can you give us some ideas around how to build awareness, and also how to, really good be ideas? What would be a really good idea for bringing balance back in?
But it's funny when you're talking and I'm listening, I'm like, oh, ping, ping. We get all these pings. Yeah, so I suppose, I mean, I've been teaching this. I've taught this with one-to-ones with family, and I've used some of the techniques with my own children, and also been in schools and had classes of 30 and using these techniques as well. And when you were just saying about some children need to be in that space and some children need that connection to bring themselves back into balance, my girls are the exact opposite. Like my oldest daughter, she has never when she isn't overwhelmed, she doesn't want you near her. She wants the space, she needs the space. Whereas my littlest one, she needs the and the connection with you to bring her own system back into it. And it's interesting having sort of had Imogen who didn't want the connection, and then the little one who did. And it took me a while to learn that this one's different.
Yeah.
Different. And she doesn't need me to give her space. She needs me to do this, and she needs me to hold the space for her. But yeah, as you were saying, when we were in lockdown, and Imogen did really start to struggle with panic attacks, which she'd never had before, and she didn't need me to ask her questions about what was going on in her body at the time, because she knew she was already telling me, but she didn't know why. But she tell me the physical response that she was feeling. She didn't need me to ask her about it. And there was no point in talking to her really, because that wasn't going to happen. I literally did just sit, and I just had my hands on her. I didn't enclose her, but I just had my hands on her, and I just sat and breathed and held that space. And yeah, it is learning those different techniques and when each one is going to be appropriate. Well, yeah, we're going to get it wrong. We will get it wrong. And it's all a learning curve for all of us, isn't it? So, but yeah, so I suppose thinking about bringing awareness. I mean, we've got so many techniques that we teach, but one of my favourite ones is for children in terms of awareness. When I've taught it to whole classes, was one where we look at body talk, and we do that difference in state.
Yeah.
One of my favourite ones to do, and to get them to put themselves in, get them to do some exercise so that the heart rate starts to pick up and the breathing rate starts to pick up, and then stopping and asking them to tell you, and what you were saying about bringing that connection back and getting them to then feel it, to sit with it. And so I don't ask them to tell me anything at first. I get them to just sit and experience it before I then say to them, okay, well, tell me what you felt. And then what I try to get them to do, and obviously this is outside of an actual, situation where we're using the technique because they are feeling angry or anxious. This is outside of that, but actually then getting them to tell me, when else might you feel your heart race like that? When else might you feel your breathing race like that? And getting them to link it to situations that are relevant to them, and getting them to name those emotions. It's so interesting the different scenarios that they come up with when when they've had those different feelings. And then obviously getting them to experience tension. And I love doing that with the really little ones, where we get them to starfish out and stretch their bodies and then relax. And whilst we're not being as explicit with the language and perhaps saying to them, okay, well, when else might you feel tense, but actually just getting them to experience the different states of tension and relaxation. So they're just feeling it in the body. Before, obviously, as we get older, as you say, as we start to get to age 7, age 8, where they've got that meta awareness, where they can tell us a little bit more about it and use context and their own background and their own experiences to really put it into context for themselves as well. So yes, I do love body talk, and I mean what you were teaching this morning with the smart part and the hands. Children love that.
They do.
Model for children to relate to their own brain, and also giving them the understanding that this part of their brain doesn't actually even fully develop until they're in their mid-20s.
Mm.
and just giving them permission to know that it's okay. And I've got one of the teachers that was in with me. I think it was last week, and he's quite young. And I was saying, oh, like, that was how I did it with the children. I got them to think about, because we talked about how this part's already developed, it's already there. So and I got them to think about, well, what are babies like? What do babies do? What do they do a lot of? And so they're able to tell me, that babies cry a lot and they do this. And I'm like, that's because this part tells them how to survive. So they know they'll tell you what they need. Yes, it's through crying, but that's because this part hasn't developed yet. They haven't got that in place. And then we talk about the different stages. So what are toddlers like? What do you see toddlers doing? And getting them to really start to think about the fact that this bit isn't coming on, like, we're working on developing it. And yeah, the young teacher, and I said, so have you ever thrown a temper tantrum? It's like, oh, growing up straight temper tantrums too. I have, but it's okay. We do it too. We all throw a temper tantrum when we're
don't we? That's so important, actually. Something we've not really said yet is that actually no wonder children struggle to regulate their emotions. They struggle to move through these difficult situations because, as you say, that part of the brain that helps us do that bit isn't fully developed yet. So that's such an important, valid point, isn't it? So that is your awareness top tips. What about bees? What have you got in your bag for bees?
Balance. So I suppose really, I like with the movement and using the movement. So obviously we know we've got the breath, but then what about the movement? I had wasn't last week, it was a couple of weeks ago. And a little boy, coming in, class of 30, and one of them walks in, and he usually does struggle when he first comes in. He clearly has had something has gone on before. Maybe it's at lunchtime, or maybe it's in the classroom. He struggles with that switch from going from the classroom to coming to my session. And there was one week, and he walked in, and he just said, "I don't want to do any of this."
I love the one like that. I love it.
Literally just like, I don't want to do this. So I just went, do you know what? That's okay. That's all right. Yeah. You're not in the mood for this right now. That's fine. Sat on his mat. He was like, he wasn't disruptive. He wasn't causing an issue. He just came in and said, "I don't want to do this." All right. Nothing about that. And he sat down. But what was interesting is, as I'm working through the movements with the rest of the class, so as we're opening the body and we do our welcome and we start to stretch and we start to really, sort of make that space for them before we even go into breath work, and we start to bring them into themselves, he started to join in a bit. And as the class moved on, and we start to, whatever I was talking about, I think I was linking emotions to the weather that week, and he started to join in with it. And by the end of the session, he'd actually been joining in. I didn't point it out. I never pointed it until the very end, and I was giving stickers out at the end. And when he had his sticker, and I said, "I know you didn't really want to work today." I said, "But I saw that you did little bits, and I'm really proud of you. Well done for choosing." And it was so lovely to see that actually it's having that trust in the techniques. Like, as a teacher, exactly. Like, oh my life, this child doesn't want to join in. What am I going to do now? I've lost it. But actually, the trust in the techniques, and just see it in action. That from that state of, I don't want to be here and I don't want to do this, and then actually by using the stretching, by using the power posing, by the arms lifted, all of those techniques. And I love my superheroes. And I love teaching. I get them in the warm up to do the Iron Man and get them to warm their hands, so they've got their power in their hands. And then we do a breath, and then we bring that power down, and just doing that is, the effect on children. The switch in them, you see it, and that's
so
the biggest example of switch I've seen so far.
I mean, that's beautiful, really, and it is really testament to that, that knowledge of the nervous system, and being in that group setting as well. If the other children are doing it, remember that's that nervous system exchange going on, isn't it? So that will bring him in anyway. But even if you just get him to, like as you did, just giving him the space, it's okay.
Yeah.
So
He
and
didn't
that
need me going over to
understanding.
him and saying, "Well, I need you to," he didn't need me
Yeah,
to do that in that
you need
space.
that
And okay, yeah,
space.
I'm very lucky because obviously I'm not having to get him to write a story.
Yes,
Or
yes,
something because
exactly.
of his
Yeah,
maths.
yeah.
So it is different. But actually, having given him the space to process what he needed, whatever it
Mm.
was that had gone on before, to give him that space to do that in the way that he needed it.
Exactly. And I think it's like your response as well. So I think, I remember really well in terms of, as you say, in teaching, when you've got assessments that you need to get in, we had reams of coursework that needed to be submitted, and it'd be really easy to be like, get this done, like you're letting me down, take it really personal. But actually that understanding of, actually, if I can just make this is, something's gone on, he's in that state, so he's in fight or flight, or he's in dorsal, whatever it may be, and I just need to give him the opportunity to choose to bring himself back into balance. I think, and then just your response to him is going to be completely different, isn't it? Which is why the training that we did yesterday in terms of you managing your own nervous system is so important, because that's going to help you choose better. That's going to help you have that distance and have that mindfulness to say, actually, this is not about me. This is about that child, and us meeting his needs, really. And in that moment, if that's space and I can give them that, then let's go for it. And just, I just think as well, we make it so much fun, actually, that they do, even if they're a bit like, I'm not doing this today, there's part of them that's like, actually, that's really good. I want to do it. And they do. And what I found is really gorgeous is they genuinely enjoy that sense of stillness. So, once they've done it, like once, even twice, three times, whatever it is, it's almost like our natural, we're predisposed to like crave that, that's, our bodies want the best for us, they want us to come back into that state. So there is that natural pull if we allow ourselves to feel it, really. So that's gorgeous. Anything else you wanted to share on B, on balance?
I suppose one of the easiest ways to get children to ground, especially if they are in the middle of that and maybe movement isn't appropriate, maybe
Mhm.
breath work isn't appropriate, is then to let's rely on the senses.
Yeah.
And a really great grounding technique is to start to get them to just really focus, and it just brings them back into their body. And as you said, it's not whilst we are sort of looking at the external world, but it's focusing that in a different way.
Yeah.
So what can you see? What can you smell? What can you taste? What can you touch? You know,
Mhm.
and what can you hear? But it
Yeah.
really, really, really simple, easy technique for bringing children back into that, and what in adults as well. So it's really
Yeah.
the grounding
That
technique.
massively works. And I think that's important, to say that the B, we call it balance, but if it's easier for you to remember, it can be body. Bring the child back into the body through the breath, through exercise, through using those senses. What can I see? What can I smell? As you've described, I think that's a really important point to make, actually, that it can stand for that helps you remember. But I love that one. So we have, as you say, millions of these techniques. This is what we obsess over. This is what we create these techniques, and we have reams and reams and reams of activities and stuff that we do with children, as you say, in the moment when they're in the midst of this emotional situation, but also that we do with them to help them prep and prepare and practice for, so that it becomes like an automatic reflex almost. So we could be here all day. We are going to share some more with you tomorrow. Just so that if you want to tune in tomorrow, we're going to have some more tips and techniques and activities that we know. These are the ones that we know that the kids ask for, that the kids really want to do. you know, and as a teacher, you know, it's important, isn't it, that we allow that flexibility, but we have in our minds like what we want to deliver, and actually sometimes we have to just allow the children to lead the way. And I think you were going to share something, Emma, weren't you, on that kind of topic? That's just come back into my
Yes.
head.
So I've been working with a family for quite a while. Probably, well, since the start of the very first lockdown, I did some sessions online. I knew mum already anyway, and little boy Alfie is autistic, and yeah, so with him, I've been doing a lot of the minis classes. So the adventures, going on the adventures, and occasionally. Alfie's not in the mood for the adventure that I have planned to go on.
Yes.
And there was one day I showed up and he didn't want to do the activity that I had planned. No, wait, he wanted to play with the Disney cars.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, I'm calling on all of my teacher skills here, and I was like, so we did it, and we got the different coloured cars out. And then he was telling his own story, his own adventure about what, you know, based on whatever movie he's watched. And he was doing moving these cars around. But as he was doing it, and he was talking about one car being, you know, the win in the lead, and this other car was behind. And I said, well, how do you think that car feels right now? Being the winner. And what about this car here? Oh, and you know, one had broken down. How do you think that car feels? And just getting him to sort of verbalize some emotions. He was so good, and he really sort of like did. It was Dad who was with me at the time. Actually, Mum had gone to pick up her other little boy, and I think Dad was like really worried because he hadn't done many sessions with me, whereas his mum had seen the flexibility that sometimes we have to have, and I think Dad was like really worried about the fact that he was not doing the session that I was like, this is fine. Do you know what? We're getting the language out. We're doing the stuff, the techniques, but we're just doing it in a different way that he wants to access.
It's perfect. And that things, you know, like once you know the principles of mindfulness and meditation, as we said, and obviously there is a lot more to it than those just simple ABCs, but you know, like in terms of parenting, in terms of being in the workplace, being a teacher, just knowing, having that loose framework allows you to have that kind of flexibility, which allows you to suit the session and weave those elements in as best you can. So it's all around that, having that attention, that awareness within the body, bringing ourselves back into balance, back into the body, and then also just having that check-in and that chat around emotions and how it's okay to be a human being. It's okay for you to express, and important and valuable that you process, that you witness, that you honor your emotions, you know. And I think, to go back from like what we said yesterday, that children model us, don't they? They don't listen to what we say, they do what we do, you know. So this is all about you checking in with yourself. So what I find really amazing is that when I'm working through these ABCs and we get to that end, but we found that balance, and then, you know, they're back in that state of calm and connectedness, there's that softness, there's that openness, and then we have the chat around, you know, emotions. It's almost like as I'm saying it, it's a reminder to myself, you know, and it's about us just reconnecting and reminding ourselves in every moment. That's mindful in itself, you know, just allowing yourself just to go, oh, yeah, I needed to hear that today. And that we're all human, we're all learning, we're all on this journey, we're going to make mistakes, but it's okay for you to feel stuff. You know, that's the biggest thing. So when you come to that that check-in at the end, and that conversation around emotions and around what's gone on, the most important thing to remember is, as I say, that you are witnessing and honoring how they felt. You're not asking them to disown it, you're not asking them to deny it, you're not telling them you don't believe them, that isn't true, that you're honoring that for them. But then you're also explaining that, you know what, in an age appropriate way, it is okay. Sometimes it's just saying, you know what, I feel like that too. Or your Mrs. whoever, the teacher in the classroom next door, she feels that too. You know, it's just about us having that sense of connection to that, and then in an age appropriate way, as I've said, helping them to understand why they might have experienced what they experienced, why those feelings in the body come, why it feels so unobtainable to think of a solution in that moment, for example. You know, just like Emma was saying when she was talking, when she did the brain model, like I did on the video this morning. One of my favorite ones is we use a story around the guard dog and the owl. And, you know, the prefrontal cortex is the wise old owl, and the amygdala is the guard dog, and we use that sort of storytelling to be able to, you know, to get across the workings of the brain in a really age appropriate way. And I just find things like that are just so useful. And what's really funny as well is sometimes I will use those same analogies, those same stories when I'm teaching corporate sessions. You know, it's just a really easy way to explain it, and that people kind of it captures people's imagination. So I think in that C, it's about that calm, leads to that sense of connection with you as the caregiver, but also allowing that space for you to check in and chat around emotions. It is okay to feel, it's okay for you to be human, and the workings of what's happening in the brain don't have to be in depth, but just age in an age appropriate way. So Emma, is there anything else you want to share around having that conversation with children, or have we covered it all?
I think, well, yeah, I suppose when talking about the emotions, one of the easiest ones that, especially for younger children, but actually I've used this with children in year 3 and year 4 as well, is blowing bubbles.
Oh yeah. This is one of our techniques. We love this. Me and Emma were talking about this before, actually. We love this one.
Going around and going around with some bubbles and getting the children to just react how they want to react to them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just get them up and then jump around.
Yeah, they want to grab them, they want to pop them.
Yeah. And then pausing and then asking them to connect in with, and what I did with the older children is we'd already taught them some techniques for you know, sort of coming back into balance, and you know, like with the take 5 and all the breathing. And so I talked to them about, okay, if I come around with the bubbles now, I'm going to ask you not to pop them. And I know you might still want to.
They're like this, they're like desperate to do it.
But I asked them to think of something that they could do to try and help themselves not to jump up and pop the bubbles. And it's and getting them to and just getting them to actually come up with a technique, because by the time I'd used this, I'd already taught them a few techniques that they could utilize. And it's good to see. You still get the odd child, especially the younger they are. but even your youngest children, you can still see there's just the briefest of moments where they will just sit and they will pause and they will watch. And it's just helping them to get that emotional regulation where I recognise that I want to do something.
Yeah.
But I've got a technique to use to help me to just pause before I react. And again, that leads to another good discussion around the pause before the reaction.
Exactly. I love that. It's like one of our most, it's the most fun, actually. I love it. And as you say, you can do it from age 2 all the way up. Even the older kids love it. I just think it's really good in terms of that listening to your body, because they like literally are like desperate. They can feel the tension. They can feel like, I want to reach and pop that bubble, and literally blow them right across, right in front of them. So the temptation is real, you know, the struggle is real. And it's really nice to have that conversation around that, like, what is happening in your body right now? What's going on? What does your body feel like? And then, as you say, allowing them, especially the older ones, that autonomy and that space to practice, and practice in the way that we practice meditation. That is a meditation in itself, isn't it? Being aware of my urge to do something and just allowing myself to settle. And that's what's so beautiful about that. They can choose their own beat, they're in that hyper, like, heightened state, wanting to go for it, and then actually I can bring myself back into balance. And then, as you say, the most important bit around that is that you can have that chat around. Sometimes, our bodies will tell us, our minds will tell us to do stuff, and we have the opportunity to turn that dial, to choose again, to decide, is this right for me? And as they get older, you can go down that whole, like, chat around values and, what do you stand for? What's right and what's wrong? But I just think it's such a fun and, like, awesome technique. There's so many layers to it, and they just think they're blowing bubbles. They
Yeah,
just think they're
I
playing
didn't
with
even
them.
tell them that I was going to make them not pop them.
Yeah,
I just let them get it out of the system first. I just like, I've got some
yeah,
balls.
exactly. Exactly. It's so good. And again, it's just that repetition, isn't it? The more that we do those kind of games with them, the better it is, and you can just, I don't know who this is, but someone's just said, I'm going to buy some bubbles tomorrow.
Michelle.
Is it Michelle? Perfect. And just let us know how you get on with that as well. They will love that. And it's just around that conversation of, in between the stimulus and the response, there is space. And it's us learning to create that space. We live in such a fast-paced world, don't we? And we're just like those pinballs in the pinball machine, and we're just bouncing from one stimulus to the other, like, we're constantly on the go. So what we're teaching them with that is to find that space and to sit in it and to soften into it. It's gorgeous. I love that. Let us know how you get on. So I think we have been on long enough. It is 9 o'clock. Thank you for those of you that are still on. I know there are loads of comments. I wanted to show this on. This is Joe, I think. Laughter yoga. Oh my gosh, this is like where I need to be with my life. I could just sit in a laughter yoga session all day. I love that. I thought about that before. I was just like laughing so much with the children. I thought, when was the last time you actually just let yourself laugh like this? It's so gorgeous. And as you say, science shows laughter actually helps us recognize our emotions and have better recall when laughing. You do, don't you? Remember those moments where you're falling on the floor laughing? So definitely, I think that was in reference to us talking about meditation and mindfulness and all those practices. Doesn't need to be silent or still or stiff and straight. So I think, let's see. Oh, there's loads here, isn't there? So
I've
somebody
tried to
is
respond to a
saying,
couple.
oh, have you? Thank you, Emma. So Anna was saying, totally resonates with me. I spent a lot of my childhood denying my emotions and feeling like something was wrong with me. Me too. Me too. And it's hard, that, but hopefully now we're sort of on the road to being able to own exactly who we are and understand that actually I'm a good person. I'm just a human being, So important. Let's see. Kelly is saying, I do that with the kids in my class, describing where they feel the emotion in their body. Perfect, Kelly. Keep doing that. Fight or flight mode gets wide into our unconscious as we grow up. Meditation for me is very much about meeting my conscious. Oh my gosh, there's so much I could say about that, but that is so true, isn't it? We get access to your unconscious. I love that as a meditation mentor and as a meditation instructor. If we're doing a guided meditation, I love that when you enter that state, like where we travel, theta is kind of like the gateway to the subconscious. When we get you there, we can then go in and then sort of take out. You can release, you can choose, it's obviously the person that's in the meditation, it's their choice, to release this stuff, but we can then, replace sort of limiting beliefs, negative beliefs with more positive ones. I love that about meditation. And we do that a lot with the children as well, in terms of using positive affirmations and just instilling in them, that notion of how you're speaking to yourself matters. You are, a belief is just a thought that you keep on thinking. I was saying even today to one of the children, like, she'd said something around how she felt or something, and I said, your cells can hear that. We are, let's just be kind to our bodies, they're listening. And she looked at me to say, oh yeah, you've talked to me about this before. It's so important. Let's have a look. We'll come back to these. But somebody, I don't know who this is. I don't know if Emma can. Michelle, I spoke to senior teacher today, totally on board and wants me, the TA, to do some feedback. Yay! Perfect. Awesome. Anna says, loved listening to you both tonight. So interesting. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And who is this? It's Joe. You're all welcome to come to my laughter yoga classes, please. Yes, we would love that. Thank you so much. So we are going to sign off. As we said yesterday, if there's any questions, if there's any stuff that you need working through, if you've got a particular scenario, something's going on with your child and you want support in that way, please do let us know. And tomorrow we've got a really exciting announcement to make. It won't be for everybody, but for some of you this will be just the thing that you're looking for. So we'll be talking all the way around that tomorrow, but we're also sharing some of our favorite, or we should say the kids' favorite, really, techniques that we use and that we have as part of our Exhale Kids classes. So have a beautiful evening. We'll sign off. Emma, do you want to sign off? Anything you want to say?
No, it's just, yeah, just thank you for sticking with us. I know we've got so much to share, and you know, it's good to see that it does resonate and it is useful. Because you know, I sat at the weekend and I was like, oh gosh, big imposter syndrome. I was like, oh gosh, I'm not qualified to do this. You know, who should do?
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Human.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just living in my humanness.
Exactly, embracing it fully and showing up anyway. You know, you made that choice, which is perfect. So we will see you. You'll see me in your inbox at 7 a.m. in the morning. And then, as usual, we'll have our 2 p.m. Ask Me Anything thread. If there's any questions, pop them on there. Otherwise, we will see you on the live at 7:45. See you later.